On the 9th of September 2018, RTE broadcast an interview that Miriam O'Callaghan had undertaken with Commissioner Drew Harris a few days previously following his appointment as the new Commissioner of the Garda Síochána. Now, the interview itself, very interesting, runs for about a half an hour, covers many different topics including his background, his current aspirations and his hopes for the future and his opinion of the Garda Síochána and so on. But for the purpose of this rather short video, three questions jump off the page, worthy of discussion and indeed examination. And he was asked, how do you square your allegiance, bearing in mind the two different jurisdictions? His answer is a non-answer. He describes in some detail the technical differences between the oaths of office in the PSNI and in the Garda Síochána, but he doesn't deal with the specific question of allegiance. And of course, obviously, the intent of the question is, if you are somebody that's bound by the British Official Secrets Act, how can you share your information in this jurisdiction with the police force that you now command, who legitimately have an interest in the information that you have, bearing in mind your previous vast experience in that area? His answer is, in my respectful opinion, a non-answer. Similarly, unto it's an extension of the same, can you share your information from Northern Ireland? And again, you can listen to his answer, which is basically a no. In relation to Dublin and Monaghan bombings, he's advised that victims are asking questions, are looking for reasons why, they want to explore the issues of collusion and all of the ancillary matters in relation to the horrific crimes of the 17th of May 1974, 34 people murdered between Dublin and Monaghan, single biggest atrocity in the history of the Trouble. And again, having ran through that, it is clear that Mr. Harris does not feel that he has any information that can offer a unique view on that, or if he has, that remains the responsibility of the Police Service of Northern Ireland. Now, clearly and absolutely, that is incorrect, because the crimes happened in the Republic, and by any definition, and the simplest of definitions, it becomes his responsibility and that of the Garda Síochána, and of course by extension to the government of the Republic in terms of following up on either a review or an investigation of those killings. In the context of the Dublin-Monaghan bombings of 1974, the past and the present collide quite markedly for a number of reasons. Obviously, this year, the 17th of May 1974, was the 50th anniversary of the bombings. When I was writing my book on the bombings, called The Great Deception, it was very interesting to get the reaction from, I guess, the younger age groups, because they, in many cases, had no idea of the Dublin and Monaghan bombings. It was like something in the dim and distant past. But part of my research has indicated to me, of course, that while it is historically in the past, it is very much in the present for a number of years. And this is where the events of 50 years ago collide with the present, because now the British police have something called Operation Denton, and this is a case where the PSNI were forced to take a review of the activities of the Glenanne gang, the loyalist killers in the north, and by extension, and possibly a tenuous extension, it is alleged by some that it also contains reference to the Dublin and Monaghan bombings. Personally, I think this is a misnomer, because Dublin and Monaghan quite clearly in the Republic, and should of course be investigated by the authorities in the Republic and not by the North. That doesn't mean to say that cooperation shouldn't and must take place in that context, but it is clearly a crime or crimes committed in the Republic, and then by any definition it should be investigated by the authorities in the Republic and not anywhere else, and certainly not be seen as allegedly a part of Operation Denton, a review undertaken under the order of a court in Belfast as distinct from a voluntary exercise conducted by the PSNI or any other British agency. There is a dichotomy in the position of the Irish government in relation to the Dublin and Monaghan bombings, because they appear to be quite satisfied to allow Operation Denton to do the so-called heavy lifting in relation to it, and indeed have in some cases through its representatives, made approving noises in relation to Operation Denton, which of course is a flawed exercise for the reason that I have mentioned. Also, in dealing with the British every year, and this year was no exception, an appeal was made for the British government to release to the Irish government, their files in relation to Dublin and Monaghan. And then, to add another tier to the fraught relationships in relation to legacy events, the Irish government intend to take the British government to the European Court in relation to the legitimacy of the British so-called Legacy Act. And I think, as demonstrated in the previous RUC PSNI experience of the current Garda Commissioner, he is one who possesses very detailed legacy information concerning the Troubles, probably the most comprehensive set of information. Now, it would appear, for a number of reasons, but maybe particularly because of the stipulations of the British Official Secrets Act, that he seems unwilling to share that information with any review in his current policing jurisdiction, which seems quite amazing. Repeatedly he says in answer to the questions, well, that's a matter for the PSNI. Of course it is not a matter for the PSNI, it is a matter for the Garda Síochána, and clearly any review, any investigation should be conducted by the Garda Síochána in that regard. It is clear that in the interest of the victims and their families and the survivors, it is clear that the Dublin government should take belated action in ordering an investigation or a review into the Dublin and Monaghan bombings by the Garda Commissioner, and for that reason that should be a domestic review, clearly cooperating with the authorities in Northern Ireland insofar as information is required from there. But this should be a review undertaken by Dublin, and it should be undertaken by the Garda Síochána in the first instance. It may well be, of course, that the current Commissioner, because of his obligations, in inverted commas, to the British Official Secrets Act, would be unable to share the information that he undoubtedly has, and that of course produces a very clear conflict of interest which cannot be resolved by placebo words or whatever. It clearly, if the information exists, the head of our domestic policing organisation on Garda Síochána should A, lead the investigation, and B, provide all of the information he has in his possession to such an inquiry, and then let's see where the pieces fall following from that. And of course, this is a matter that should be respectful of the victims, their families, and their relatives. But of course, the wider Irish national interest in the Republic would be served only by that kind of approach, and not by abdicating responsibility to another police force. No other country would do it. No other country would adopt this handoff policy